Hello, everybody. This is Pick One, Pack One, everything you need to start your draft off right. I'm your host, Gavin McKay, and I'm here with my co-host, Paul J. Camo. How you doing, Paul?
I'm well, Gavin. How you doing?
Finally getting your name right.
Yeah. I'm Paul, and on today's episode, we're going to be peering into our crystal ball and looking ahead to what 2025 has in store for limited Magic.
That's right, but before we do that, we want to start things off with a little segment we call Beating the Blowouts. So, want to talk to us about that a little bit, Paul?
Yeah, so in this installment of Beating the Blowouts, it's for everyone who's playing Innistrad Remastered Edition. Unless a bunch of listeners reach out asking, we're not going to do a lot for Innistrad Remastered coverage. So this is about it right now. We did want to call out a few cards for folks that are playing that format at their LGS or at home.
Yeah, so basically when you're playing in this draft, these are some things that you should look out for. You know, this format is all reprints. So these are cards you've seen before if you've been playing for a while. But if you need a jogger, you need a refresher, this is kind of a helpful, handy thing to keep in the back of your mind when you're playing. We've got 3 cards to share. So the first one we wanted to talk about is
Aim High. So
That's
this
right.
is my pet card
Yeah,
for this format.
You like this card a lot?
I love tricks that say untap target creature, do something else.
Yeah.
I look for
read this
any
card out for our
opportunity to
audience,
do that.
especially for those that are listening and not watching?
Yeah, so Aim High is a green instant. It's 1 in a green. It says untap target creature. It gets +2/+2 and gains reach until end of turn.
That's good. That's really good. I mean, that's like the definition of a blowout when you're thinking you have a safe attack. I mean, combat tricks that untap a creature are inherently better than those that don't, because your opponent doesn't think that they'll have the shot to actually, you'll have the shot to block them. But this also gives a pretty good stat boost as well.
Yeah, and reach is not something to be ignored.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, did you see in previous Innistrad sets, I mean, there was a vampire theme, and they usually have flying. Spirits are also in this set, so again, lots of flying. This type of combat trick will work really well in a set that has a predominance in multiple colors that have ways of having flying creatures. Now, my pet pick, it does not involve flying creatures at all. In fact, it contains creatures that come from below, zombies. This is Compelling Deterrence. It's 1 in a blue, and blue-black being the zombie theme or sub-theme. It's an instant that says return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. Then that player discards a card if you control zombie.
So much for the neighborly right there,
hospitality. Yeah, exactly. So it can possibly get you up 2 cards worth of value. If you're bouncing a token and you have a zombie on the field, it's kind of a 3-for-1 almost. If you're playing the zombie deck, you should definitely take these pretty high. It is an uncommon in this set. I don't know if it was common in the set that it was released from.
I don't remember off the top of my head.
If it has, it was upgraded. I think this is a pretty good spot for this type of effect that could potentially get you 3 cards worth of value. It's at its best, obviously, in the blue-black zombie theme deck. But the fact that it can bounce any non-land permanent is just icing on the cake, really.
Absolutely.
The last one we're going to talk about is Valorous Stance. Now, I think that with the new blocking rules, this trick is actually a little bit weaker. Let me read what it says. Valorous Stance is a white instant for 2 mana. Notice that all of these are at 2 mana, so if your opponent has untapped mana and then in these colors, just keep an eye out. So it's a 2 mana, 1 and a white for a instant that you choose. Either target creature gains indestructible until end of turn, or you destroy a target creature with toughness 4 or greater. Well, why is that so important, that modality?
Gavin, I think the modality is the only reason we're discussing this card. If this card didn't have that kind of modality, like you said, the new combat rules have made blocking worse. So a target creature gaining indestructible is no longer the sick blowout that it used to be against an opponent. Right. So you're
Yeah,
really
where you
looking
protect your
to
creature that was blocking first. Yeah.
exactly saves everybody behind him and you potentially eat the other guy. Um, Now the only thing that really saves this card and why we're talking about this card is it does have that modality. Do one thing or when you need to do the other thing. Um,
Yeah.
I've
The
always been
fact that
high
it's
on this. I'm
toughness,
less high
because
on it now, but I still think it's something I'm looking to slam in every deck that's white that I'm playing.
yeah, I mean the toughness instead of being power is a little bit harder because it's worse against aggressive decks that may have a 4/3 or something like that. One of the cards that we were thinking about putting on here but decided to leave off was Pack Guardian, which is a 4/3 that possibly comes with a 2/2. So this doesn't deal with either of those things, but all things being equal, it's one of White's best tricks. Especially if you're being aggressive, I think it may serve better as an aggressive trick than as a defensive one. But it can certainly help you out in the late game if you're dealing with something that's got a big butt and you don't have any answer to deal with it, or you're spread more wide if you've got like a token strategy or something like that.
There's some big scary angels in the format. If
There are.
you go
Yeah,
up
it might be
against
good
them
in
in
the
the
mirror.
white mirror match, this will certainly answer them.
Absolutely. So let's talk now about the main topic of why we're all here. We're going to talk about the limited forecast for 2025. So, as the date of this recording, which is in mid-January, we have a forecast of, let's see here, how many sets? 8?
6 premier sets coming.
6 premiere sets, excuse me. Yes, 6. And what are your feelings on how many sets are coming out and how you're feeling about the year in general?
Well, I'm feeling very positive. I think it's important to note that we're talking about premier sets. So people need to know what a premier set is. That basically means that it's a standard legal, fully draftable set. 6 is more premier sets than we've ever had. Typically, 5 has been the number, and occasionally there's another draftable set in the summer. Having 6 is a lot of formats to wrap your brain around in a little bit of time. So we're going to be doing lots of learning and lots of learning something new every couple months. It's going to be a busy but exciting year for the players out there.
Yeah, let me pull up these sets because we have some very exciting sets on the horizon. I know that I'm excited for a lot of these sets for different reasons, and while it might be a little bit polarizing, in terms of the content, a lot of universes beyond, we're definitely in it for the limited formats that really speak to the fan base and seeing how everybody enjoys these IPs, really.
Yeah. And it's important to note, we haven't talked about it quite yet. Universes Beyond sets for 2025 are legal in standard.
Yeah,
So that's why they're
yeah.
on this list, and that's why we're talking about them, because they're fully draftable sets that are legal in standard. So you're going to be seeing these cards. You're going to want to draft these cards and hold on to them.
So let's see here. So 2025 is slamming into high gear first with Aether Drift. So the preview season should be in full swing by the time you hear this, but it's going to release on Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day, Paul.
Happy
I know that
Valentine's Day.
there might be a few upset girlfriends that could possibly be uh, left hanging if some guys go to the card store instead of hanging out with their Valentine's Day date. But
I
for at
have
least
it
like the
on I
weekend
have it on good
before,
authority that we will probably be spending Valentine's Day with our significant others on Friday,
on Friday,
because we
yes.
probably have plans on the very first day after that the set is out. The
Sure.
first Saturday the set is out, there's an RCQ, limited RCQ near us.
Yeah, we'll
So,
probably be going for that. We'll just
yeah,
have to make it up to our significant others and, obviously say thank you for supporting us. And
for sure.
absolutely can't wait for Either Drift. Do you say Either Drift or Either Drift?
I've been saying Aether Drift because that's what
Mm.
I've heard other people say. I
Mhm.
imagine some people are saying Ether Drift.
Mhm.
I would check with Wizards which they prefer. I think it might be Aether Drift.
Let's see how they say.
We can roll with Aether Drift.
So the way that Merriam-Webster has it, I believe, is ether, because it's in reference to ether, which is like a kind of potion or concoction, some sort.
Okay.
So either way, however you say it, ether drift is coming, and it's going to have cars. It's
Vehicles. All
vehicles.
about
I mean,
vehicles. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's run through kind of the rest of the year though, because after the checkered flag drops on Aether Drift, we're storming our way back to Tarkir.
yes.
Tarkir Dragonstorm is going to release on April 11th. If I did my math right, there should be a pre-release weekend that starts on April 4th. There's also
Just
something
after
very
April Fool's
special
Day.
going on with the release of Dragonstorm that we're going to get into when we talk about the set in detail.
So what's after Dragonstorm?
After Dragonstorm, we have our first of 3 Universes Beyond releases of the year, which is Final Fantasy.
Yeah, so this is going to be standard legal. It's like the Lord of the Rings set, part 2.
Lord of the Rings Part 2, but Lord of the Rings were only legal in Modern, so this is
true.
a ripple. They've said that they've designed these to be good in Standard and not be busted in half the way half of Lord of the Rings was.
Orcish Bowmasters, anyone?
Yeah.
So yeah, so these are actually going to be in Standard. Folks are going to play these cards. I'm trying to think of Cloud, or Sephiroth or Chocobo. Going to be legal and Standard, right?
Yeah, which is exciting. And it's important to note, we haven't really talked about it here, but them making Universes Beyond cards legal in 2025 doesn't apply to anything that came out prior to 2025. This is only Final Fantasy and Forward that's going to be legal and Standard. The One Ring is not suddenly legal in Pioneer or anything like that. So
well, they did ban it, so
they did ban it in Modern.
In Modern, yep. So honestly, I'm a little wary, but it does seem like they're taking proactive steps to sort of tamp down expectations to say, hey, this is the direction that we're going in, and we're going to be respectful of, everybody's hearts with this, in the game. And we don't want to do anything that's going to trample over the spirit of Magic. We'll see if that holds, but honestly, I'm very excited because this kind of intellectual property only comes around every once in a while. And so for folks who are fans of the series and have played Magic for a very long time, this has to be a dream come true.
Yeah. And I want to get into that more in depth when we talk about each of these sets individually. Kind of running through like what we're going to expect in these sets and that sort of
thing. When is Final Fantasy coming out?
Final Fantasy is June 13th. Pre-release, if I did my math right, is June 6th weekend. And then after Final Fantasy, we have the final in-universe Magic set of the year. This is one that I'm looking forward to talking about a lot in depth when we get there. That's Edge of Eternities. That's going to release August 1st with a pre-release on July 25th.
Yep. Okay, so there's still 2 more sets coming out this year after that?
Yep. 2 Universes Beyond sets. One of them we know what it is. They haven't confirmed the release dates on it. And one that we know nothing about.
It's going to be a mystery.
It is a mystery, but there's a secret going around the internet that maybe some wizards working overtime at
I think I know.
on Arena might have dropped hints about it. So we're going to talk about that. I'm super excited if that actually ends up being what it is. But we'll get to that when we get there, because they haven't given us a lot to talk about. But
my guess, Karlov Manor Part 2. First one went over so well. They're going back to the Clue Mansion. They're going to find who killed what's-her-face. It's classic story.
Well, they've already done Clue, so what's next?
Clue Part 2.
Monopoly.
Monopoly. See,
yeah, Magic the Gathering Monopoly.
Paul. I think I saw that in a card game store once. All right, so I think that's everything for this Universes Beyond standard legal sets that are coming out this year. What are your thoughts on Aether Drift, Paul? Because honestly, this is a set that's going to be coming out sooner than we think. And I was a mere tot when the first Tarkir plane came out. So what can we expect? Excuse me, not Tarkir. This takes place
Kaladesh,
on
which is
Kaladesh.
now
Excuse me.
called what's the updated name post the revolt?
Mm.
There was a big drama on it about the internet, and I've already forgotten what the new name is.
Ashkar.
Ashkar.
Avishkar.
Avishkar. Okay.
Avishkar.
Avishkar.
We're gonna have to practice pronouncing some of these names because I'm used to calling it Kaladesh, but obviously Avishkar makes sense, and renaming it is perfectly great, especially after the revolution and everything that's happening in universe. So I see the promo material has a motorcycle, looks like a possibly Tron influenced motorcycle of some kind on the image here, and Chandra's driving it.
Yeah, so Chandra's back. I'm very excited about that. I'm also really excited that the setting is Murganda as well, because Aether Drift is going to take place on multiple planes. It's going to take place on 3 planes, I believe they said. So it's a multiversal race happening across multiple planes. So that means we're going to see some places we've been to and some places that are new. And we're going to see some really cool vehicles. So it's going to be
Copters.
Standard vehicles are going to be back. Mardu vehicles all over again.
Greasefang players rejoice.
Exactly.
Honestly, if there's one thing that you could hope for with this set, and one thing that Wizards could really knock out of the park, what's one thing that you would say would be at the top of your list?
I mentioned in a previous episode that I really like the playtest card Unicycle. From the first Mystery Booster set.
Yeah.
If you could pull that up really quickly.
Yeah, you got it.
So we could show people what Unicycle was. But basically, it's a vehicle that is also an equipment. And I just thought the modality of that was really cool. And I just really want to see cool, interesting vehicles for us returning to kind of the vehicle setting again. I really enjoyed vehicles in Kaladesh. I thought they were interesting. There's Unicycle. So 2 colorless artifact equipment vehicle. First strike, haste. Equipped creature has first strike and haste. Equip 1 or crew 1. And it's a 3/1 on itself when you crew it.
It looks pretty interesting. Honestly, it's a playtest card, so obviously something that was made with some design philosophy in mind, but it's really just a silly card for right now. But you want to see this pulled off in Sin. You want to see
I want to see this be in a premiere set. I want to draft this and play it again. I enjoyed drafting it and playing it in Mystery Booster. I enjoy playing vehicles. I like the play patterns of vehicles in Limited. I think it gives you interesting decisions to make of how you sequence your plays and things. So I'm really excited for that. I think Aether Drift is going to be great. I don't want to dwell on it too much because we're speaking from the past and our listeners are already in the future and they already know half the set that's coming out and we have no idea.
Yeah, they may know more than we do, but I'm just excited because that looks like a pirate ship possibly in the background.
It has pirate vibes, so I do dig that.
Honestly, pirates are one of my favorite types. I have a commander deck that I love playing that's pirate themed. And so if I can get a cool pirate ship, piratey galleon, Avasti maybe sort of thing going on, I definitely would appreciate that. I think that would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
We're in Aether Drift, and where do we go from there, Paul? What's next?
So after Aether Drift, we are getting caught up in the storm that is Tarkir. We're going to Tarkir Dragonstorm.
Fight dragons with dragons.
Yeah, so this is a return to Tarkir. For the boomers out there, they're probably going to be stoked for this set. I have very fond memories of the original Cons of Tarkir, quite a bit. It played out very differently in Arena Best of 1 than it plays in pod play. So I would suggest people that were like, oh, Cons of Tarkir suck. They're never going to play that again. Oh, it was so bad. Play it in pod in paper with your friends. You'll experience a totally different format.
I hope so.
That aside, returning to Tarkir has a bunch of things that we're going to have to think about. There's going to be flavor-wise, and there's going to be mechanical-wise things we're going to think about. So we're going to think about factions. It's going to be potentially a very faction-centered set, the way the last block was. So that could be something that comes into play. There's definitely going to be dragons. I would like to see
Dragons,
a return. Say that again?
Dragons? You think there's going to be dragons?
I would hope that there's dragons in a set named Dragonstorm, though who knows? They could throw us a curveball, and they could be sending dragons to other planes because the Dragonstorm is out of control. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I mean, there are some very classic dragons, Nicol Bolas being, obviously the biggest and the baddest, but I think that there's quite a few directions that they could probably go with this. Is there anything in particular, any mechanics that you're looking forward to seeing again? I can tell you one thing that I'm not looking forward to seeing, which is the quote-unquote disguise mechanic. What was it called?
Morph was the original flavor of it. I don't know that we'll see that again. I would be surprised if we did see that so soon after seeing disguise in
Murders of Karlov Manor.
I know,
Manor. It's very forgettable.
I just always want to call it Markov Manor because
everybody calls it Markov Manor.
Yeah, it's a bad set name, but whatever. That's my biased opinion of it. It's your correct biased opinion. The thing for me that I want to see is I want to see the factions. I want to see cool legendary characters, dragons and non-dragons. We know from the Spotlight art that Ugin is back, so this is going to be a Sarkenvol Ugin-centric storyline of some sort. There's also, assuming that she survived, there was the Planeswalker who was the head of the Jeskai faction in the alternate timeline, whose name is escaping me right now. She's a popular Jeskai commander in Commander.
Narset?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
so
Narset
will be making an appearance potentially. So there's interesting things there.
What about from a draft perspective?
It does say in the blah, blah, blah to expect dynamic clan gameplay. So I'm expecting multicolored flavor of some variety. I'm expecting 2 and 3 color decks. I'm expecting good fixing. Maybe there's going to be, because it is Tarkir and there's going to be something weird, we could either see some kind of bonus sheet nonsense or something along those lines. So I think there's a lot to look forward to. And I don't think we're going to see the things from the past that people didn't like. I think we're going to see a lot of good stuff.
You're not expecting a Clash of the Clans crossover Universes Beyond for this?
I wouldn't... Universes Beyond extensions for any set, I wouldn't put past anybody. If you can dream it up, I imagine it's going to be a thing that'll happen.
The Magic Dragon in Dragonstorm?
I would play that card any day. That card probably wins games.
I would certainly think so. Or Dragons from Dragon Tales. That's also fair game. You have a young one. Maybe someday you can show them the Dragon Tales.
Yeah.
Okay, so after Tarkir, we are then... So there's the Universes Beyond stuff, but we're actually going
to... Before we go away from Tarkir Dragonstorm, I actually want to talk about what is probably the thing that most excites me about the set from a limited standpoint.
Yes.
And that is this right here. The Spotlight series is coming, and it's going to be Tarkir Dragonstorm Limited.
That's amazing.
What a Spotlight series is it's an open entry, high-level event. Anybody can show up and sign up and play. It's limited, so it's going to be sealed deck day 1, draft day 2, draft top 8. No qualifying necessary. Show up and battle.
This is the dream. This really is like the dream. Everybody just shows up, and then all of a sudden, you don't need an invite. You can just show up and play.
Nope. And go back and look at the dates. If you go back and look at the dates of when the set releases, this is week 1 of the set releasing that everybody is going to come and throw down with this. So
April 11th. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's,
It is day one of the limited format. If you want to
so
come make a name for yourself playing limited, this is the place to do it. I'm going to attempt to move heaven and earth and other planes to be in Denver in April to make this happen.
honestly, if you keep listening to this podcast and you find yourself getting better at limited, we hope that we can help you in that way. And obviously, we're very excited for this set and other sets, but having a core knowledge of things to look for in limited Magic, draft and sealed, it's going to be really important here. And obviously, if you're familiar with older sets of Tarkir, it gives you a little bit of advantage, probably not too much, but it's going to be something that you can rely on and look forward to.
Fundamentals is going to be the thing that's going to carry the day, I think, because everybody's going to be on the same playing field going into
More so than
day
usual.
one of a format. So
Yeah,
have those
definitely.
fundamentals down. Shout at us if you want to hear us talk about more fundamental type things. We can certainly make content focusing on that.
Absolutely. One thing that I will note is you like to use the rock, paper, scissors analogy. Nobody's going to know what the rock is. Nobody's going to know what the paper is. Nobody's going to know what the scissors is. And so, again, the good players are going to figure it out quicker than others. But at the same time, it's about as good of a chance as anyone can get to coming up with that archetype of what's going to work and what's not going to work. I can't tell you the number of times I've gone to a pre-release or had a card in my pre-release pool that I thought was garbage. Turns out later on it's one of the best, highest winning percentage cards in the set, and I just either wasn't using it correctly or didn't value it highly enough or well enough after the format was released and people were finding out the paper, the rocks, the scissors. So take everything with a little grain of salt and just say, there's going to be some mistakes made. And obviously you can't get everything 100% of the time, but finding these sets that are coming out in 2025, I'm so excited for these limited environments and specifically this draft and sealed environment. I hope that they can really push the boundaries of what the format is and how we actually are, seeing these dragons and everything else come out of the Dragon Storm.
And I want to note that we did have a faction set very recently that did not play out as nicely as I felt Khans played out. We had Streets of New Capenna, which was also a faction kind of oriented set, and it was supposed to be a 3-color factions and whatever, but the limited format really played out. You were either in banter bust, kinda. You were in Brokers, I think was the name of the color. So it was white, blue, and green. You were either in that or you were probably doing something wrong. So everybody fought over that, or they played Rakdos. That was like the other really great deck to be in. And every other color combination didn't stack up to those color factions. So I'm really hoping to see balanced color factions. I'm really just excited to go out and play some limited and meet some people. Say hi to me if I'm able to make it out there. I would love to chat about limited Magic all day long.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And dragons are one of the premier archetypes in Magic that have ever existed. It's one of those original creature types that, when you think of Magic the Gathering, you probably think of an iconic dragon, Shivan Dragon or any of these iconic cards. So to go back there and see where it all began and kind of come back full circle and showcase the limited side of it with sealed and drafting, it's going to be great for Magic to highlight that, as opposed to some of these other events, where they're trying to put their different spin on tournaments and making sure that everything is fair and balanced and equitable. So we're really, really happy to see that. And I hope the Spotlight series really knocks it out of the park. I know that I'll be tuning in, even if I'm not there in person.
For sure.
All right. So after we've got this Spotlight series and Dragonstorm, without talking about the Universes Beyond stuff, there's one more set that we have heard about that we want to talk about with you guys. Edge of Eternities?
Edge of Eternities. So this is the first sci-fi setting in quote-unquote real Magic. We had a sort of sci-fi set in Silver Border Land, Black Border, Acorn Land,
I love
whatever you
those
want to call
lands.
it. That
They're
was
gorgeous.
Unfinity.
Yeah, Infinity's lands were so gorgeous and beautiful.
Well, yeah. Format wise, that was not a fun limited format at all. I was very excited. I love Silver Border. Unstable is in my top 10 limited formats of all time. I really
It's
enjoyed
just really
drafting
fun.
that format. It's so
Incredibly
much
fun.
fun. Unstable
Yeah.
is so much fun. Unfinity is some of the most unfun Magic I've ever played. Every round that I played went to time. Every match was decided by some factor outside the game, the number of mirrors or fire extinguishers in the room or
Yeah.
something different. It wasn't decisions made in the game having any effect on the game, really. And that was a huge disappointment to me
I
as a
mean,
lover of silver bordered and wacky cards.
wacky cards are cards. I mean, there have been cards in Magic history where you throw them and, ante and play cards under the table and play a game of Magic within Magic. I mean, fun has always been inherent in Magic,
For sure.
but what hasn't been inherent in Magic is sci-fi. I mean, this has
Yes.
typically been a very grounded fantasy setting. Like, no laser guns, no TVs, no anything. So to see it have, I guess, a black hole in the background and a star exploding, and what are your takes on this? I mean, you've been a Magic diehard since day one. So, does it feel like it's been long enough now where this kind of genre can be explored within Magic's universe, or do you feel more at home with this fantasy trope that may or may not be where Magic belongs?
So I will always love traditional fantasy. I will always love the OG Magic experience, as it were. Like Foundations, I feel really knocks it out of the park with a good, like, this is what is resonant about Magic. This is what makes Magic exciting. This kind of blanket generic fantasy, for lack of better words to describe it, But I really like the idea of
Nostalgic
doing.
fantasy?
Say that again.
Nostalgic fantasy or fantasy with whimsy?
I think you can have a good amount of whimsy in your fantasy without it going. You don't have to be Lorwyn or Bloomborough to have a little bit of whimsy in your fantasy, And I think that's one of the things that Foundations did good is that it really harkens back to Alpha Beta Unlimited in a lot of ways. The cards are resonant and flavorful, and just screams to me when you say Magic the Gathering. That's what Foundations felt like to me. It felt like Magic the way I remember it as a kid. It really brought out like my inner 13-year-old in a big way.
I really like the nods to other cards that are within Foundations as well. I mean, Tragic Banshee is one of the cards that I think was most successful from that set because it references another card, Tragic Slip, and the art on that card is horrifying. It really is. It's a ghostly specter. I mean, this is not a kid's game. It was never intended to be quote unquote kid's game. Some of the artwork is gruesome or ghoulish or unsettling or weird, and so sci-fi has a lot more, for lack of a better term, kind of whitewashing, or I guess it would be chrome washing, because it's very shiny and there's a lot of, elements of futuristic technology and things that are actually the antithesis of a fantasy realm of sorts. And it's very science-based and less magic or mythic based.
Well, it doesn't have to be, because they're also very clear to point out that this is not a science fiction set. It is a space fantasy set. So this is a lot less Star Trek. This is a lot less Isaac Asimov, Greg Bear, Foundations, etc. This is very
Foundations,
much
the show and also book, and not Foundations, the Magic the Gathering set.
Yes, Foundation.
Gotta separate this.
Yes. Isaac Asimov wrote a book series called the Foundation series.
Yeah.
Definitely check it out.
Fantastic
if you
book.
like the quote unquote hard SF.
It's also a show on Apple TV Plus. Not a sponsor,
Yes.
Just like the show.
Yep. And this is definitely leaning more into the Star Wars, Star of the Guardians. If you're a fan of Margaret Weiss, not writing Dragonlance Fantasy with Tracy Hickman. I
Guardians of the
highly
Galaxy?
recommend that space fantasy book series. It's very good. It was also a trading card game in the 90s that I highly
Interesting.
recommend you pick up for dirt cheap on the internet and play a couple of games of as well. It has mana from based on Magic, essentially.
Wow. Interesting.
So they're
So for this set, like, do you think they're gonna? Okay, maybe knocking it out of the park is not a realistic thought for their first attempt at balancing magic, fantasy, and sci-fi. What would be something that you would say would make this set a win? Would it be that it's flavorsome and that you still see some references to older cards, or you still see characters that you recognize, or that you see, play patterns or things that you are looking forward to? Or is it more like you want new mechanics and you want something that's going to be flashy and cool?
what I would say to you, Gavin, is they've already accomplished a knock the ball out of the park fantasy sci-fi crossover set, and that was Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. Kamigawa Neon Dynasty
That's true.
was a futuristic cyberpunk set. It was Kamigawa brought into like the 22nd century, 21st century type of world.
A
There's
little bit time
computers
travel-y.
and tech and stuff in Kamigawa. And I feel like that whole set was a slam dunk.
Hmm.
Flavor
Very
wise, it
fun to
was
draft.
cool. Limited, it was one of my favorite limited formats in the last 5 years. It's very high up in my limited formats of the last 10 years. It's slowly becoming somewhere in my top 15 or top 10 formats of all time. I find something new to appreciate about that format every time I play it.
Absolutely. And so if they can get, 75, 80% of Kamigawa in Edge of Eternities, if they can capture that magic of, this is a new plane, or an old plane in a new time, and kind of making sure that they respect, and they're not just slapping, a neon bumper sticker on, Thopter and calling it a day.
I like that they've hinted that we're going to a new world because we're going to the Sothra system or something like that, if I'm pronouncing it correct. I'm probably not. But if you look at the spotlight art, if I'm not mistaken, that is Tezzeret
It looks like
in the
Tezzeret, yeah.
spotlight art. So I feel like we're going to see something cool story-wise involving Tezzeret, maybe involving the consulate from Kaladesh who all got overthrown. Like, who knows what they're going to do story-wise.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see... I imagine it's going to be an artifact-centric set, potentially. Maybe we're going to see energy come back to standard. There's lots of possibilities they could take it. I'm very hopeful that they will give space fantasy the same respect in Magic that they gave Cyberpunk
Mm-hmm.
when they did Neon Dynasty. And I hope we'll be looking at another set that we say, oh, this was an all-time banger.
So my takeaway from this and my hope for this is that if Ether Drift is good early in the year, that they have some cards that will synergize with this set too, and sort of, I don't want to say bridge the gap, but basically have either flavor-wise or mechanics-wise some crossover between these two sets to bridge them and basically make them help each other out, because we're doing two entirely different things. Ether Drift is specifically, vehicles and, probably artifacts and some things like that. Again, we haven't seen any of the spoilers or anything, so we're just speculating at this point. But what I would say is that if there's something that's really good about Ether Drift, I hope that they keep that and keep that momentum going for Edge of Eternities. And if there's something that doesn't hit or doesn't quite work or isn't quite right, that they're able to correct in time for Edge of Eternities, because I know these sets are designed well in advance, and R&D and everything that goes into it. I've seen little flavor hints and texts throughout sets throughout the year. Usually there's some sort of overarching, I don't want to say a theme, but you can kind of see little hints about where the formats are going in a couple of different cards, and cards that do well there's usually a card that will, for 3 mana, that will create another card, either a 1/1 or, you know, a 2/2 token. There's certain formats and certain things that come to mind where you'll be able to kind of predict how these sets are going to develop. And to me, I just hope that they do exactly what you're saying, and that Kamigawa knocked it out of the park flavor-wise, and, you know, with all the different mechanics. I hope that they can pull that off here too.
Totally.
Okay, so last but not least, and it's not even really last because we've got 3 of these guys.
Yeah. Now we're leaving the in Magic universe, and we are going universes beyond. So Final Fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
I know many people that are very hyped for this. So Gavin, I'm under the impression that you're one of the people that is very hyped for this.
Okay,
Am I wrong?
I am a big Final Fantasy fan from afar. So
okay.
what I mean by that is I absorb all the Final Fantasy content through secondary sources instead of primary sources. So the stuff that I know most and best are Final Fantasy Tactics, the video game, which is a turn-based RPG for the Game Boy that I played when I was younger. That's a turn-based RPG as opposed to, you know, Final Fantasy, which is more open world and things like that. So I know the characters. I've seen the movies, and I've seen some of the stuff. So I know the characters, and I know a lot about the universe, but I don't necessarily, I'm not a diehard. I can't quote, you know, every single line of dialogue, but as a game enthusiast and as somebody who appreciates what Final Fantasy has done, the action RPG genre and everything that they've accomplished as an IP, this crossover, much like Lord of the Rings, could be a home run and a half. Really, they have everything that Magic could possibly want to do with some of these characters, and I can definitely see this crossover being extremely successful. It's also launching right in the middle of the year, so that's one of those things where Lord of the Rings came out mid-year last year, and everybody was either on summer break or, you know, it was the middle of the summer and everybody was looking for something to do. And then Lord of the Rings drops. There's a lot of hype around the One Ring card. People from outside of Magic in pop culture, you know, heard about it and kind of got attracted to it, and it became a whole story. I can see that definitely happening with Final Fantasy as well.
What do you think is going to be in Final Fantasy as far as limited is concerned? They describe powerful spells and classic summons in here. So what are you expecting? Sorry.
So there's the Final Fantasy kind of battling system. It's a RPG, so you're going to have classic RPG stuff like, you know, thunderbolts and, you know, fire spells, ice spells, the classic, you know, color pie sort of delineation with magic in the background. But they also have interesting spells like transmogrify, which is, you know, just turning, or frogify, you know, where you turn somebody into a frog. They have silence. They have some other very, very magic kind of, you know, magic adjacent spells. They also have mounts. Mounts might make a comeback because you can ride a chocobo. Mounts were from Thunder Junction, so maybe they will have some sort of crossover there. I'm not sure if it's going to be like a vehicle style or a mount or something like that, or maybe they'll just make those mounts characters, face characters, and maybe they'll just be like a 1/1, you know, flyer or something like that. But the characters, the face characters, are really what I think a lot of people are looking forward to. Cloud, Sephiroth. I mean, there's a whole host of characters whose names I would completely butcher that are going to be coming to this game, and to have that card in your hand, you know, to say I own this card or that card. The other thing that I'm really looking forward to, actually, I think, is Final Fantasy has some of the greatest art of any video game. And so I hope that they can collaborate with the artists that, came out with some of these game designs because they're iconic. They really are very, very beautifully designed characters and instantly recognizable. And so there's the Buster Sword, which Cloud carries on his back, is instantly iconic. There's just like there's a lot of things that, when you see it, you immediately recognize it and you say, that's from Final Fantasy. And so to hold it in your hands in a physical paper Magic card is going to be something that I'm very much looking forward to. As far as the limited Magic element is concerned, I'm not sure. I'm really not sure.
What I'm hearing from you, Gavin, in terms of a limited format is maybe something like OG Dominaria, where it's very centered around legendary characters, legendary equipment, etc., historic, maybe sagas coming in, or maybe even potentially going like a vaguely Baldur's Gate direction and having like a riff on backgrounds being something, because we're talking like an RPG and some way of like leveling and specializing characters.
That's possible too. Leveling is definitely something that hasn't been seen in a little while. So that mechanic could definitely make a comeback. I also think that there's going to be probably an equipment sub-theme, because there's a lot of equipment in the Final Fantasy series. You have to equip your character with swords or staffs or swords. Did I say swords twice? There's a lot of swords.
A lot of swords in Final Fantasy.
A lot of swords in Final Fantasy, but the other important thing is, you're right. There are a lot of legendary characters. There are a lot of quote unquote face characters, similar to Lord of the Rings, where, you have obviously all of the face characters that you know and love, and even some that are side characters that, maybe make an appearance here or there, like Bilbo shows up on a card, but
Gavin, if there was not a Tom Bombadil Magic the Gathering card in the Lord of the Rings set, Lord of the Rings fans would have rioted in the streets.
They would have. And them, they are feisty. They have pitchforks just hanging out, and they're constantly chanting in Orcish. Just my final thought here on Final Fantasy.
Yeah,
I would say that this set it has a boom or bust capability. I think that it's either going to be a knock out of the park set where everybody's going to be like, oh, this is the next big thing, and every summer we'll see another large IP, vaguely fantasy related, to appear and knock it out of the park, and it's going to be, the set of the year, and people will remember it for years to come. The Final Fantasy fans won't show up, and it'll kind of drop off the face of the earth, and we'll remember it more like March of the Machines or All Will Be One, that sort of crossover where everybody's coming together and there's all this big fight, but nobody really remembers what happened. Do you remember what happened in March of the Machine? No. So I if they can make it the story really speak to people and be interesting, instead of just, hey, here's a cool face or here's somebody, I think it'll be successful. If not, then, it could be that this is just, a one-off. They're going to have more opportunities to have other IP, though, because there is another surprise that's happening next.
The thing that I would note about this is that it is specifically Spider-Man, obviously, but it says in the description that it slings cards from across the Spider-Verse. So that means to me that we're going to see lots of Spider-Man variants. We're going to see not only Peter Parker Spider-Man, but Miles Morales Spider-Man. We're going to see Spider-Pig and Spider-Noir and those characters from the recent movie. Maybe we'll even see, I don't remember when the next chapter of the movie
Into the
series is going to come out.
Yeah.
But if they don't have some kind of tie-in with the art treatments from those movies, I feel like they're doing a disservice to fans. I feel like it's a huge opportunity there to do that, and I would like to see them do it.
Here's a question. Spider-Man obviously is a huge IP. Do you feel like he fits into, I think of all the universes beyond, Spider-Man is one of those sets that I feel like maybe it doesn't have as much of a magical element to it that we can really point to and say, hey, I cast a spell and it's spider web slinger, web blaster or something. Like I just, it doesn't feel as magical to me, and maybe that'll change with the release of the set. And the Universes Beyond stuff definitely helps. Universes Beyond in the Spider-Verse, where you can go between dimensions and there's all different types of Spider-Mans. Every dimension has a different one.
Well,
and that could be cool, but
just look at fight and bite spells in Magic already. We see that as a common trope in green spells. So, Savage Punch was a Magic card from back in OG Khan's block era. So the flavor is definitely there of punching and kicking, I would like to see, what I would have liked to have seen was not them doing specifically Marvel Spider-Man. I would have personally rather seen Marvel The Avengers and had the full flavor gamut, as opposed to having a bunch of characters relegated to a secret layer that nobody could get copies of.
Sure. What I would say is, like, this is a testing pool right now. Spider-Man is going to obviously extremely popular. I love Spider-Man. You love Spider-Man. I can't think of a single person that doesn't love Spider-Man. And for that reason alone, I think that it's going to do well. But there's a difference between doing something really well and making a lot of money for it, and doing something because it's the right thing to do and it makes sense, other than from a financial aspect. There's something that, is inherently special about Magic, which are that its characters are, interesting, and their stories are very diverse and cool, and it takes a lot of different themes and rolls them into this beautiful card game. And have this kind of crossover. I hope that they're just being very diligent to keep what makes Magic special, and not just slapping 150 different characters on previously made Magic cards and saying, this is just a resleeve of a Sarah Angel, but now instead of Sarah Angel, it's the Vulture,
Well, I think the Lord of the Rings set a good benchmark to aspire to. And
yeah, absolutely.
So that's how I'm looking at all of these new Universes Beyond sets that are coming out. They knocked it out of the park flavor and lore-wise, in my opinion. They were really true to getting all the face characters down. They were really true to getting kind of the nameless, but and recognize them, their characters as well. In the Lord of the Rings set, they crafted an amazing limited environment. The ring tempts you mechanic, it was a slam dunk for me.
Yeah, it was really good.
What I'm looking for in all of these Universes Beyond sets, these draftable sets, is I'm looking for an awesome mechanic that, like the dude's rug in The Big Lebowski, ties the room together. If that's missing from any of these sets, I don't think the set is going to succeed. But if they find a way of putting that web together, where this set is concerned, I feel like they can do that.
Pun intended, obviously.
Pun obviously intended.
Yes, it was. What I'll say, the last thing I'll just say is, with these Universes Beyond, you're absolutely right that they have to have something that ties the set mechanically together, that is fun, that is repeatable, that people like to do, that introduces challenging and interesting gameplay mechanics. And basically, if Lord of the Rings 2.0, Lord of the Rings 2 dropped, tomorrow or something like that, I would sign up for it, draft it, I would go all out for it, first day. And, I hope that is carried on with respect, and that, there's this IP that's very well respected, and, they really take their time with it. The other thing is, we're getting so many sets this year. I hope none of this stuff is rushed. I would rather have a little bit longer of an incubation period if it meant that the cards were better, than having, slightly more sets come out every year, because it just makes things a little bit more fatigued and not as fun.
I think we're going to be helped by the fact that all of these sets have to run through standard now. So I feel like because there is that bottleneck that they have to run through, that none of these things can break standard in half. It all has to be vetted in their playtesting for the standard environment. I feel like all of these sets is going to be better than they could have been if it was, well, we need to have all of these cards make an impact in Commander and Modern and Legacy and Vintage, because those are the only formats they're going to be legal in. I feel like pushing everything power-wise, flattening it down into something that's standard playable is going to translate into the limited environment as well. So that's my hope, is that we see that for all of these that are coming.
It's just going to be kind of crazy to think that Cloud is going to be fighting Spider-Man. Never thought I'd see the day. One last thing on the Spider-Man Magic Marvel kind of crossover. Doctor Strange feels like this would be kind of the right place for them to start. But starting with Spider-Man, again, we'll see how it goes. But if we could get Doctor Strange in here with his magical, the magical mystical sorcerer, Sorcerer Supreme, we'd love to see that too.
Gavin, I will make a prediction for you right now. I will say if Doctor Strange shows up in the Marvel Spider-Man set, he will be the only Planeswalker in the set. That is my theory. That is my prediction.
That would be a great theory.
We can
mark it down right here.
Mark that down, everybody. You can come back and yell at me later if I'm wrong, and he's
that'd be great.
Dirtily legendary that nobody cares about. But I think it's going to be our only Planeswalker in the set, and I think we're going to be jazzed to see him in any pack that we open.
I am glad that they did go away from the 12 Planeswalkers per set. Having one or two or possibly three at most it seems like the fair amount. All right, so this last one that we want to talk about is unknown, but what does that say on the screen?
That says Avatar, and that's not James Cameron's Avatar. It's the only Avatar that matters. It's Avatar: The Last Airbender, and it has been not officially released, but on Arena, they were teasing through the Arena store various flavors of things, hinting at sets that are coming out this year. And they did a selection in the store that had the whole internet buzzing that, are they dropping hints about it being Avatar: The Last Airbender? There's all these things referencing the elements, earth, air, fire, water. And then they've got benders in here also. So is it going to be the Avatar set? I am fingers crossed that it is the Avatar set.
My fingers are crossed for that as well. I love Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's such a great show, and I think flavor-wise would be perfect for Magic. I could see, various different planes that they could take on and do very well. It just kind of feels very right up our alley.
Yeah.
Right up Magic's alley.
100%. I think this is going to lend itself very well to Magic. I think we're going to see Tarkir-esque factions. I could even go so far as to be jazzed with it being like monocolored factions matter, maybe. Something like that. I don't know how you're going to get white Magic and black Magic represented in that. So I imagine it is going to be 2 or 3 colored combinations.
Yeah. I would actually, one of my gets for 2025 I would love a monocolored set, or a set where you could play monocolored, because that's one of my favorite things to do in any kind of draft environment, is just get enough cards to run a monocolored deck. You don't have to worry about the mana base as much, but having a set specifically devoted around each of those colors individually, I just feel like those two things just mesh so well together, Avatar: The Last Airbender and that style of gameplay. Obviously, you can still cross them, you could have the earth and the water, or the fire and the air, whatever, but really, if you think about it, there's a lot of monocolored aspects, and you just saying that right now made me even more happy to think that there would be a possibility of that happening. Even if it's not Airbender, I'd love that.
Well, if you like monocolored set kind of design, you have to go back and look at OG Theros. That's my recommendation to you. You would love
Yeah, that's
that
the one with the
limited format.
devotion and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely think that that's one of the stronger sets and one of the ones that I missed out on because, like I said, I started getting into Magic just a few years ago. But the Rising Star, I really like Theros. Excuse me, I really liked what's the one with the Norse gods?
Kaldheim.
Kaldheim. Loved Kaldheim. So it's probably around that same vein. And I'm also a huge Greek and Roman gods mythos kind of scholar, and so that does seem right up my alley. I'd definitely have to check that out. Do you have any final thoughts on like 2025? Any big gifts that you would love to see if Magic was if you could control Wizards of the Coast for one day, make one thing happen for 2025? What would it be?
I want to see diverse, well thought out, limited formats. I want to play, since we are going to be playing a different format and having to learn a new wheel and fashion a new rock, as it were, every 2 months. Mm-hmm. I want it to be a new experience every time. I don't want to just, this is the virus beetle. This is the bear with set mechanic. This is the same thing over and over again, reskinned. And that's what we have. I want to see a totally new something every time. I want to see some new mechanic really drawing out and making each limited format stand out and be unique on its own.
My wish for 2025, maybe I'm starting to get my wish already, but less 1-drops. I feel like there are too many 1-drops that are too impactful that if you play it on turn 1, the game is over. And so it's gotten better as the year progressed. I feel like they moved away from super duper aggressive creatures and aggressive things. I think the last format that was as fast and you had to have something out on turn 1 was Pyrexia All Will Be One, which was the poison theme, but certainly it's one of those things that I like to have a very mid-rangey game. I'm not as much of a control player. I like mid-range, and so if you don't have something on turn 1 feeling like you've already lost the game if you're on the play, it just feels super bad. And I think that the game should, I don't want to say start on 2, but if you start on 2, you shouldn't feel like you're extremely behind. And so that's my wish for 2025 is that there's a lot of really good 2-mana creatures and not as many 1-mana creatures that can basically win you the game. Or if they are, that they're either at minimum uncommon.
So as we're moving away from Foundations, Gavin, I want to ask then, are you pro or anti-Healer's Hawk?
I love Healer's Hawk. I think Healer's Hawk is a shade beyond fair. It's not unfair, but it's not particularly fair. It feels like you're extremely behind after you played it. The card that I think, was just, something that I don't want to say egregious, but there was like this 1-mana might from Pyrexia All Will Be One that if you didn't have it out on turn 1, it basically get like 3 or 4 poison damage in just to start, and it left a poison might in its wake when it died.
I don't remember that card off the top of my head.
I'll pull it up
like I said before, Boomer Brain, I've totally forgotten all of the sets that existed before Foundations.
It's all good. That's why we're here, and that's why we're doing the primer, basically. Right, so
I think it's interesting that you say Pyrexia like the cooking dish, like Pyrex, because I've always said Phyrexia. Phyrexia.
Am I saying it wrong?
I don't know.
I could be saying it wrong. Somebody really needs to come up with a magic dictionary.
Magical lexicon.
Magical lexicon. Quick, somebody patent that.
Writing it down right now.
All right. So it was called, I think it was called Phyrexian Might. Oh, no, it was called Crawling Chorus. Crawling Chorus. That's what.
The 1-mana white creature.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
All right. I'll just read it out. Crawling Chorus is 1 white mana. It's a creature Phyrexian Horror, Toxic 1. When Crawling Chorus dies, create a 1/1 colors Phyrexian Might artifact creature token with Toxic 1, and this creature can't block. So basically, if you didn't have that out in the Phyrexia All Will Be One metagame, if you didn't have that out on turn 1, you basically lost. You lost the game and the tempo, and it was just so aggressive that it wasn't very fun.
Is that, though, a testament to Toxic as a mechanic?
The thing is, you actually
versus
weren't
more that it's a one drop?
you weren't actually winning with Toxic. You were winning with damage.
Okay.
It's just the Toxic enabled some things because there was a corrupted mechanic. The Toxic helped, but it didn't necessarily, you didn't win with toxic damage, you won with regular damage because the things that triggered when you had this corrupted ability actually mattered. 3-2 got first strike when you were corrupted. And it just completely skewed, the game in your favor. So it just felt like if you were on the play and you had this one drop that you just couldn't lose. And that felt bad. That felt really bad. So I hope that doesn't happen in game design in the future. That's my hope for 2025. That's one of those things where I love good game design, and when it doesn't feel fun to play, it's not a very good game design. So we'll call it out when we see it, right, Paul?
Yeah, exactly.
Shout out to Wizards R&D though. You guys have really knocked it out of the park lately, and we're big fans. So anything else you want to say about 2025, Paul? I hope it's going to be a great year.
I think it's going to be a great year. I'm looking forward to it. I don't have anything else to say this turn.
So you want to move to end step?
Yeah, we'll pass priority.
All right. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks so much for listening. Bye-bye.